computer. And we can always like chuck it if it doesn't go anywhere, but we'll just get to have the recording here anyway.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to Switched On with Paul Moderman and James Wood. We're once again coming at you with our quick flip episodes, which is just James and I shooting the breeze, pretending that we're really amazing sort of prophets of the digital age, and that you really, really want to hear everything that we have to say about everything that happens on a computer or inside it. And we're talking about books, tech books. And James, we like this is kind of amazing to me because we had a list of a couple other things that we're kind of thinking of talking about, and we got onto books, and all of a sudden we both had our like complaining old man hat like go on our heads right away. And so it's like, well, maybe let's just talk about this and see what's up, because you were just describing like a change in your own approach to reading tech books, and both the change in the approach, but also the kind of the material these days, right? So tell me more about that, and then because I have a little anecdote in my head about kind of the same things too, and let's jump onto that. So take me back to, you have a dedicated laptop downstairs for this stuff.
Yeah. So, I guess there's that ongoing debate of, do you read, paperbacks, hardbacks, or do you have like some sort of e-reader device and stuff
Yeah.
like that? And, for me, it's actually, what used to be an e-reader has shifted to a laptop experience, because so many of the books that I'm reading, you can't really, either I've got an e-reader in one hand and a laptop in the other.
Yeah.
Or it's so hands-on. There's so much that, it's I used to be in the business of like, putting little bookmarks, to come back and try that next time in front of my computer to see how it works. And I started getting frustrated because there's just so many bookmarks. It's like this whole thing is chock full of like, I need to be in front of a computer. And I think it's, around here at Bodark, we've always talked about, different ways that people learn. And I've always been a book person. I'm very visual. And other people like to watch videos or Pluralsight or, this and that. But it's becoming harder and harder to find, pick a topic. I just want to do a deep dive here, and I want somebody to have kind of curated this content for me and make it, more pleasant.
Like
you know.
that. I think that's the key right there, is that that like the author has taken the time to make the thing pleasant to do, right? Because we all have to do, these days we all have 150 things that we need to like throw onto our skill set, because tomorrow we're gonna have to do blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
But like there also is just the things that you're interested in, and the things you want to know long term, and things you want to just put in your own knapsack for whatever reason, even if it's tech books. And I can, so I was thinking about this because you were saying like sometimes it's like impossible to really go through that stuff without like a computer handy to just do all of the things that are happening in that book anyway. Some of the best tech books I've ever read still had code in them, but I could read them without an interpreter in front of me and still get the concept planted in my head. There was a great one. It was called Data Science at the Command Line. And the author was funny and smart. And it was literally one command at a time on like a bash prompt, going through like slicing and dicing a CSV file into various machine learning and data science paradigms of what you can do with that data. And because the guy would go, okay, I'm thinking I want to try this, and they like one typed bash line, show the output. Oh, that didn't quite give me what I was thinking, because what I wanted to do was XYZ, but I got ABC. So as I toss this around in my head, what I really think I maybe want to try is this, and it would be one line command, show the output. Okay, now I'm starting to see like it was a narrative that was unlocking concepts like one step at a time, and it was so easy to follow that the concepts stayed with me when I like closed the book and I went upstairs to like, eat dinner or whatever it was that I was doing that day. Um, and I think part of it too was that like it was it was so you know I think there's a lot of material out there now that's put out there by like the big tech companies themselves about their products,
Mm-hmm.
which really doesn't even do necessarily conceptual anymore. It's more like, I want to make the button go over here. Here are the steps to make the button go over here. And
Yeah.
that doesn't hang in your head. That doesn't change your perspective on anything. Not that it's
Yeah.
supposed to necessarily, but for the purposes of reading a book, like you can't, unless you're going to sit in your screen and then like have the doc open here and then have the editor open here and just literally do the thing that you're reading about in the IDE or whatever, you might as well not be reading the book, because it's not, by itself, it's not even designed to hang
Yeah.
inside your head.
Well, it's all it feels in some ways like you're skipping a step. The way I
Yeah.
used to learn a lot of things is, I'd pick up a book and go through the fundamentals, and then after, I might pick up other books that would, almost have that cookbook flavor to them, of just,
Mm-hmm.
I need a collection of things, if I need to do, XYZ, that, here's a couple pages that, just recalibrates my brain, or whatever. But um you you're absolutely right. I mean, it's so much of documentation now is just, here's an assortment of recipes. If you need to do this, here's the page that walks you through it.
Like, is that a barrier or an opportunity in like the biz apps, low code, whatever you want to call it, the space that we find ourselves playing a lot these days? Is this sort of tech books make you want to like fall asleep kind of thing? Is that an opportunity for places to do this? And I don't even necessarily mean uh write better tech books, but more like, I think maybe as application development goes in some ways more and more into the hands of people who know very clearly what they want, but haven't dedicated years of their lives to, reversing arrays. You know what I mean? Like, what can be done about that for these people who can have a huge impact if they just had like the concepts of this techie stuff kind of there available, and got them through to the other side of that stuff.
I think it's I think part of the challenge is this stuff is coming so fast
Yeah.
that you talk about those individual companies trying to build out their learning portfolio, I would say, and it's always kind of multidimensional. I mean, there's was it Trailhead and the
Oh
Salesforce
yeah.
space. A
Yeah.
lot of people go through that, and it's more tutorial based and it's comfortable. And then, there's, educational courses that they offer and
Yeah.
documentation. And, I think just combined, when you start to look at, all these different perspectives, citizen developers versus pro code developers, um, I think companies are probably having to realistically make some hard decisions about, we could have a small army of people that all they do is build educational stuff all day long.
Yeah.
And, uh,
Yeah. That's totally true. And you know what? I think about this too when I look at. We were talking about this book that I had in front of me before we got on. It's a book about Google BigQuery, and I realized that this. I mean, this is a hefty book. It's like 450 pages or so before you get to the index or whatever. And I said, and I actually thought about this when the book arrived in the mail. I was like, wow, this is really great. There's a lot of stuff here. But then I was like, some these there's two authors here, and kudos to them for going through and doing this. But also, like, just like you said, at the rate at which technology changes, at some point, do you kind of think like these poor people spent probably 2 years of their lives doing this stuff
yeah,
for of aimed aimed at like the Wile E. Coyote painted on target on the side of the rock, where by the time all the editions get printed and stuff like that, a year will go by and then nobody will be doing the thing like that anymore.
Yeah.
It'll be something else.
Well, we did the Hanukkah platform book, which is probably shows some age in and of itself, but the title, um, we wrote it twice, and it was a scenario where
Man.
we basically did the first 8 or 9 chapters, and it spent a ton of time pulling that together. Then we started on the back half of the book, only to discover that it had gone through several rebrandings. Not in terms of names, but in terms of look and feel and
Yeah.
terminology changes. And so, we start going back through the kind. It was a complete rewrite, but all our screenshots are off, so we got to replace all of those, and
Yeah.
we got some of the examples needed to change.
Mhm.
And sure enough, by the time we got through the back half of the book, and we had reworked the first half, the back half needed to be, I mean, that
Like
was in
that's yeah.
the course of about 18 months, and it's changed a ton since then. And now I've got like 150 copies at my garage that are collecting dust.
That's I mean, I think maybe that's just the faster technology goes, the less incentive there is to spend that amount of time on one thing. Because as we were talking about earlier, it's like it's an effortful thing on the part of an author to like make a readable experience on top of just click here, drag this here, enter this property and the blah and for
Yeah.
whatever tool you're doing. And so if you put an effort into a thing and then it just sort of evaporates into the ether in like 3 years, I don't know, it feels kind of like, why did I even do that? You know?
Yeah. Well, I wonder how much of it is a function of the market. I mean, one of the interesting things I always found that in the SAP space was how little developers cared about things like design patterns.
Yeah.
When I would go off and work with .NET developers, Java developers, I mean, the Gang of Four book was on everybody's shelf, and
Hmm.
it was like,
Hmm.
this holy relic,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people would look at it, and the Java developers like, meh, and it was a function of, had someone invested time to learn that, it would not impact their bottom line whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's not the difference in getting a role or not, or
No.
increasing the rate, or
No.
and I think that's true of a lot of technologies now.
Mm.
Of that 450 page um, book on BigQuery, there's definitely, you have to ask yourself, do you want to invest the time to go cover to cover and learn all of
Yeah.
that, knowing that in practice you may not use it all.
Yeah.
um, and I think that investment proposition has changed a little bit for a lot of developers. I mean, I've had so many developers over the year to tell me, I wasted my time learning this, I never really used it. And I'm always of the opinion, I mean, I can tell you a whole laundry list of SAP technologies that I've learned that I never use, but there is value in it. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
even if I don't use that specific technology, I use concepts, or I'm able to relate those concepts to something else that came along after it.
Yep.
Um, but value proposition is different for everyone.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I I did the second edition of a book, and there was lots of prose writing, of course, in there, but there's also, like you said, like probably half of the work of that was simply arranging my screen into the same shape as the first edition, and then
mhm,
getting the second edition screenshot with the new GUI of whatever that thing was doing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And that was just, I don't know. That this also I think it fits into why I was saying before the show that like my only long form reading these days that really feels good to me is like my sci-fi novels on the shelf that are just like,
yeah,
those are still designed to be a pleasure to read no matter their length. And that doesn't matter what genre. I'm just picking sci-fi because that's my thing. um but anything else is not, it's just not designed that way. It's and I kind of wonder if that's, is is that it, are we doing the right thing by podcasting about our griefs in the short / long form tech book space. Who knows? We're just putting it out there into the world anyway.
Yeah.
But the question still is, I think, when the time comes to be persuasive about something in our sphere, we as technologist kind of folks, we have to make the choice of how to present that to people who want to hear it. And I don't know, these days it feels less and less likely that a book is the right way to do that.
Yeah.
Although I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, as a field or a discipline, computer science. My oldest son is, just finished his freshman year in college, and took all the intro computer science classes, and he would challenge me like, why do I need to know this? And
Mm.
the CS purist in me really wrestled with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably never going to have to build a double linked list ever again. But at the same time, I think there's value in that. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
some people, Andrea, who's the boss around here, I mean, she cannot stand me, trying to give her the backstory. She just tell me what it is, like, tell me how to do it, and I think that's a lot of people, are in that boat. But I think that if there's anything to take away from this conversation, it is, how do, especially for people getting started, we get that question all the time, like, what do I need to learn? What's my progression? Like, they want to
Mm-hmm.
build a learning path. They want to, customers are wanting to know, how do I upskill my resources? This is their
Yeah.
background. This is what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's almost two answers. Here's a quick path to get to a certain level of competency. And then here's a longer, more circuitous path to get you to a place of more in-depth knowledge, mastery. If you want to get super philosophical, where are you on that Bloom's taxonomy of,
Mm-hmm.
are you
Mm-hmm.
able to just perform tasks as long as they fit into a nice tidy bucket?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you able to apply the knowledge that you've picked up from all these different things and innovate and be creative? And
And reshape your own bucket at will.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. That, I mean, I feel like we've beaten this topic up a little bit, but it's kind of unlocked a few things that maybe we might want to think about for some future discussions. One is what's it like to write a book, although that might be a little bit too navel gazy, so who knows. Um, but also, what are the ways to get the junior type folks, you know, out of that junior sort of muck and mire in the best way, both quickly but also humanely,
Yeah.
right? Because my path out of being a junior person, I was not humane to myself, and that was I'm worse for the wear in some respects because of how poorly I demucked myself in that process. And so anyway, it's a possible topic we should touch on sometime too.
Real
Hmm.
quick, I have a somewhat related question I would love to get your thoughts on.
Hmm.
I feel like in terms of industry documentation, SAP has always kind of had their own flavor.
Yeah.
If you spend any time on help.sap.com, very rarely will you find pictures, screenshots of anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that has simultaneously been extremely frustrating,
Yeah.
but it's also made some of that documentation timeless.
Yeah. Boy, that's a good point, because I always hated that. I hated that for forever, because I think too, like, it never, I felt less anchored to the truth if I couldn't verify that what they're talking about here is this screen that I'm staring at,
Yep,
trying to do things to, right?
exactly.
Um, but to your point, it also at the same time, it it unmoors it from time and space and lets you sort of reapply. In other words, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. Like, I'll be looking for an answer to like one of those esoteric like config strings for HTTP servers or whatever, right? In SAP, and I'll hit the documentation, and the answer will be correct for what I need, but I'll look at the URL and it'll be for the wrong version of NetWeaver, right? But it
Yeah.
didn't matter because it still works
Right.
the same way. And so like that has this weird balancing effect to it too, right?
Yeah.
Of like there's maybe the learning curve is steeper to get there in SAP, but once you're there, you know how to shine the flash right around a little. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I've always preferred the Azure and GCP documentation
Yeah.
myself, but I do see some of the wisdom in how SAP has done it over the years
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah. It's an interesting contrast because I think there's pros and cons either way
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's some of those products. I mean, you better make triple sure you're on the right version because
Yeah.
it's night and day different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
Good stuff.
Interesting. Well, we've got a few things queued up for possible other topics at times, or we were also thinking about talking about digital transformation, so we might do that next time too. But we'll see wherever our meanderings lead us.
And just if I can give a little peek behind the curtain today for the listener, this was kind of like the Jordan flu game for Paul. He's been fighting through COVID
Oh
and
yeah,
recovery, and so
you might be able to hear it in my voice a little bit. Like I have just like a little bit more manly rumble to my voice because of the recovery period for COVID here. Yeah. So yeah, so we'll on behalf of James switched on here, we'll hit you guys up next time with some more stuff. But coming up next week is back on the case of our current season of the main podcast about IT meeting the needs of the business. So with that, thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week.